Wow, thank you for sharing that. Honestly, like when I come up with these topics and ideas, like I don't know what the outcome's gonna be. And I find myself amazed because you just don't know what other people are going through. Like Venita used to be the girl that, like, when I was going through shit in high school, like I would go to her and she like pep talk me into things and like making me feel better. And wow, I'm literally speechless at this. Like I thank everybody for sharing that. One big thing that I'm seeing in all this is either family involvement or family pressure. So can you guys talk to me about what was your family's involvement, whether it's your partner or outside family? What was their involvement? Let's go to Selene.
So I had a little of both, I would say, involvement and pressure. I was lucky in the sense that, I don't know if lucky is the right word, I guess, because this is just speaks to how long this issue has been prevalent, but my mother struggled with this as well. And I actually remember it really clearly because I have almost 10 years between myself and my little brother. So I had a front row seat to watching her. Obviously, I didn't know what it was, but watching her struggle with it when he was born. But moving forward with my own experience, that proved to be really helpful for me because I did have somebody that was that close to me that had gone through something similar. My partner, I would say, even with my mom, I wasn't upfront with her, I don't think ever, about how bad it was. The only person that ever saw that was my partner, ever. Friends, family. And I just remember we took a family vacation when my son was about 3 months old, and all day long we would, we were outside in the sun and going to the beach, and everyone was having a great time. The whole family was there, and inside, and I'm sure, people looking at me could see it. I just was numb. It was like food tasted bad. Like I can't even describe. And then when the sun would go down, that was when the feelings would always really kind of spike for me. We're laying in bed in this hotel with all of our family around us in all these rooms and all these memories being made around me, and laying there next to him and just asking him why he couldn't help me stay alive. And he was, I can't imagine how he felt. But I would overhear little snippets of conversation in the kitchen of this place that we were renting with him and my mom. And I remember hearing her saying, why can't you do more? Why can't you help her? And feeling so guilty that she would say that to him when it was the same sentiment that I was putting on him, in our one-on-one conversations. I know that he's done some work, not with me to work through some of that, but I think that's one of the hardest things that has been left behind by my experience with it, is the trauma that I put him through by placing that responsibility on him as one single person, and my husband is unique in that he has he's a very charismatic individual, but he doesn't have too many non-blood close friends. And he didn't have anyone to lean on at that time. There's all this pressure, if he goes and tells his family or his parents, how much I'm struggling, that there's a sense of betrayal, there's a sense of loss of trust. So he didn't have anyone to talk to about how truly difficult it was for him at that time. And I was so in the middle of it and just literally trying to keep my head above water and stay alive that I couldn't see what I was doing to him. So I guess from that sense, he was there. He was obviously my main support, my I hate to sound cliche, but my rock at that point. I don't think that I would be alive if he hadn't been there for me. But it was at the expense of his own well-being. And as far as pressure, I will say that even though my mom didn't always know exactly how bad it was, even though my friends didn't know, there was constant pressure as far as medication. Every single person that cared about me in my life was telling me, you know, every time that I would kind of open up a little bit and say, I've really been having a hard time. I don't know how I'm going to go back to work. I don't know how I can get through the day tomorrow. I don't know, you know, the response was always, well, you need to make the decision that's right for you. In fact, so many different people in my life would say the same sentence to me. They would literally tell me, they would say, you know, when talking about breastfeeding specifically, you know, I'd rather your children have a mom than, you know, be breastfed or whatever it might be. So, and it was all well-intentioned, and it's true. I mean, it is true. It sounds crazy to me now to even think that, you know, that's an argument, but at the time I just felt like everyone wanted to just push me off to the side, have me be medicated and be okay and on my way, and didn't want to deal with my shit anymore, frankly. So I had that pressure always, and I always felt like I was letting everyone down by not making that decision to just get on the meds. And I wondered if I was self-sabotaging. I wondered if there was more to it than just what I was putting out as the argument against it. So yes, in answer to your question, both involvement and pressure from family, for sure.
Well, the first thing I want to say to that, this is something like I see a psychologist weekly, and then I also host a male's support mental health group. And one of the biggest things that comes across is just like, love yourself gently. Like, when I heard your story, it's like, we know what we sign up for when we marry you or we date you. Like, when we decided that's the road we're going to take, we know we're down for every aspect of that. We want the dirty drawers. We want the dirty socks. We want all that aspect. And honestly, like, my marriage has gotten better when we went through shit. Cause like at first we were so like good cause we never went through anything. It was so cool. Like, man, me and my wife don't argue. And as soon as we had this baby, we argue and beefing and battling like fucking crazy. But like, honestly, we love each other more because of that. Cause now we understand it too. So what I've taught myself and what we talk about in the group is just love yourself gently. Like, yeah, I went through some shit, but you know what? It's okay. It's okay. I got the right support system around me to make sure that I'm going to get through all the bullshit at the same time. On that note.
Yeah, so I had family present also after my daughter was born. Tony was there, and both my mom and his mom were here to support, which ended up being a bit too much, honestly. My mom actually came here. She lives in Washington State, so she came to New Orleans for 8 weeks and lived with us. And in retrospect, that was too long for her to be here. And she should have stayed in a different house after about 2 weeks, probably. But yeah, so having everybody's input, like at times it was great. Like when our daughter wouldn't sleep and my mom would be up at midnight, she would take her and just rock with her. And that was great because then we could get some sleep. But then when I was struggling to feed her and my mom and his mom and him were all saying like, well, maybe she's not getting enough milk. Maybe you're not producing enough milk. I wanted to kill everyone. And it made me feel really terrible. So it was, and it's just something that I've realized after experiencing this is that, you know, parenthood, motherhood is not just one thing. Like, you know, when people talk about you just like loving your baby and just falling in love with them, that may be true, but you can also hate it. There are moments when you hate being a mom or being a parent. And I think the the story that we're told that it's just either you're a great mom or you're a terrible mom or a parent, you're a great parent or you're a terrible parent, is just so false, because everyone just feels, at different points in their journey are going to feel all these different emotions. And I also am in therapy as well now. And just talking about the transition from not being a parent to being a parent it's such a drastic change. And I felt like I prepared so much for birth and for labor, and then had no real support plan or preparation for like what the transition to being a parent would be like, and just felt like I had fallen off a cliff. And both of our moms had very different, like they actually had similar experiences to each other, but very different experiences than what we were experiencing, because they were both single moms who had kids in their early 20s. And they really did not understand the role of a dad. They were really problematic in that, because they were like, well, what are you doing? Like you're not supposed to be doing that, or like they would just constantly question him. And it really put a strain on our relationship, because we were already, I feel like, not on the same page. Because I feel like something that other people have mentioned is that for the first couple months, I was really struggling, and like I can't really remember positive things from those first couple months. Like I was so sleep deprived and so just upset that everything is like a haze. Like it just feels like very foggy and cloudy. Like I don't really remember what happened during those first couple of months. And so I felt like, having our parents there, sometimes it was great to have somebody to do laundry and, and do the dishes and prepare meals for us. But other times it was just like, we need some space. We need some way.
Yeah, these women gave me the business, bro. They gave me the whole business. But I needed that because there was things that I needed to learn in that, but they gave me the fucking business.
Yeah. And I feel like, all of that too was, they're trying to be supportive of me and understanding, like, she just, produced a human being out of her body. Like you need to like cater to her exclusively. And I appreciated that on one hand, but on the other hand, I was like, but he also is a parent and is waking up with her and is sleep deprived. And we need to be like united in our experience right now. And we just weren't. And I felt like our moms exacerbated that. And made it harder for us to communicate. Had it just been us in our home with our baby, I feel like we would have been able to resolve issues much quicker and much easier. But I will say the thing about like entertaining people, I'm lucky enough to have a lot of friends who are also parents. And we did a meal train, and they came over and brought us food. Sometimes I would be asleep when they came over, so they would just drop off the food.
It was actually her friend. It was actually her friend that told her. She was like, look, I called her best friend, and I was like, bro, I'm stressing. And like, I'm just going off. And she said, it sounds like your moms need to get out the house.
Yeah.
And so it was because of her friends that our moms ended up leaving, and we just like got to us. And because we were scared, bro. This is our first kid. Mm-hmm. We were fucking scared. So we would lean on our parents. And then we kind of leaned too much. And then like, we kind of like created like a wall between us that was like, no, we're actually okay with handling this. We can do this.
Yeah.
But we were just so fucking scared.
Oh yeah?
So let's go to Venita next.
Okay. So what was the involvement and what were the pressures? So I mentioned earlier that my mom flew in from Massachusetts to try to help a little bit, and my husband's parents lived in northern Minnesota. So I believe what they did was they came down and stayed either at a hotel or with my sister-in-law, who at the time I think was living in Hugo. I can't remember exactly where she was living, but it's a few cities away at least. So my mom had a very unique situation because she became a mother at 16, and she had the help of my grandma, and my mom was also she dropped out of school, and so I think she's trying to be helpful the way she knew how. And for her, that was just coming and having fellowship, and while it was a sweet gesture, it sometimes was too much, and especially with the people that she brought with her. And so I would have much preferred to have just quiet time, and having her around if I needed her to show me something, or if I wanted to initiate that. My in-laws were much more understanding of the situation. Like I said, they came over, they brought over groceries, they made a meal. They did it all while I was sleeping. I barely knew that they were there, and then they were gone. And so in retrospect, I think the way my friend Katie, who's a board certified lactational specialist, she said, if people are going to come and see you guys, you should have them either cook for you, clean for you, or leave groceries. And I feel like in retrospect, that was probably the best advice that I've ever heard, but I heard about it too late. So that's what it was like the first time around. The second time around, unfortunately, my father-in-law had a heart attack about a month and a half before my daughter was born. And so my mother-in-law was planning on flying out just to provide some support with, the things that I've said I found helpful, like, the cooking, the cleaning, allowing me to rest and bond with my baby. So it was essentially just my husband and I. But when I think about pressures of postpartum depression and anxiety, I think it's multifactorial, right? And so the things that I think that contribute to that also are parents, but I also think that we have a very unique situation right now as it pertains to social media. And so, I remember when I was first a parent with my son, Donovan, the whole Pinterest thing was coming out, and Instagram was suddenly a thing, and you were being fed images of, what moms should be using. You were fed images of what, Pinterest moms are, and these little projects that you're supposed to do for your kids, and you're also fed, these mommy groups, and there's these expectations on what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, and I think that definitely fed into it. I never expected to be influenced in that way, but I definitely think that fed into my depression and anxiety as a new parent. And so there was that. I will say, Selene, I really appreciate your perspective on how breastfeeding, the choice to breastfeed, or the opposite, the choice to not breastfeed, can affect one's mental health. And so my experiences for my first kid, I had intended to breastfeed him for over a year. And I think partly because of a few things. One, I thought it was going to be cheaper, and who doesn't want to save a buck? I mean, college was expensive, and I was trying to be frugal. It's easier. Sometimes you don't have to wash a bunch of bottles, but at the same time too, like, I also was in a profession where you're taught that breast oftentimes is perceived as best, right? So you have all these antibodies and nutrients that are said to reduce chronic illness, that is supposed to support the immunity of the baby, to promote bonding. And so right around that 5th or 6th month, my son was really, he was preferring the bottle over me. And I was trying every way to make breastfeeding work. In fact, around the same time that I reached out to my PCP to get treatment for my depression, I was like, okay, can I get some Reglan to help with my breast milk supply? Reglan is a medication that is used to help with like nausea, and it can also help with, increasing GI motility, but it also helps to promote prolactin in our heads, and prolactin helps to promote more breast milk. And so I was so desperate to make it work that I was popping 4 of these per day, so 1 tablet every 6 hours, and I knew one of the side effects was worsening depression, but I was so desperate to make it work. And I think that was probably the tipping point. Breastfeeding was not going to work for my first kiddo, and I felt like a failure. So Guinevere, I really can empathize with your story there. With my second kiddo, I had her 5 weeks before my second year of grad school, and so I had the opposite intention. I was like, I'm going to be okay if I can just breastfeed for 5 or 6 months, but after that, you know, life is going to get really, really busy. And she ended up being the kid who would wait all day for me and wouldn't take a bottle. So I screwed myself over. But yeah, I think the pressures are multifactorial, and therapy won't fix it alone. Medication won't fix it alone. I think we have just grand expectations as a society for women specifically, for parents specifically. And there's tons more pressures than there is support. So I'll just end there.
Man, the biggest thing I learned in that situation was, because I witnessed my wife trying to want to do everything. And like, I didn't want to like really suggest too much, because I didn't want to like be like, all right, maybe we should do this, but because it's what she wants. And if you know my wife, she wants something, like you just listen. But I saw her like she was, oh man, she was like dragging herself into the ground. And I'm like, there's nothing I could do to help because I couldn't breastfeed. But I'm like, I wanted to suggest formula, but like, I also understood why she wanted to only do breastfeeding. But when it got down to it, she dug herself in such a hole that I'm like, bruh, let me at least be able to help. Even if we do formula 1 fucking bottle out of all of it, that way you get some kind of rest. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like there's such a line, because you want to respect what she wants, but you also want to be like, damn, you like, I don't want you to like dig yourself into a ground. And I totally understand that damn pressure to like, it's almost like you have to be so perfect as a mother, but that perfection is not fucking real. It's not real to be that. You literally cannot breastfeed all that time and get some good sleep and then be a productive human being. Like, it's just that it's unfair. It's unfair is what I saw out of that. Let's go to Irene, then we're gonna go to Bumblebee.
Well, I'm a little bit of an anomaly, right, on this question. So what I would say, some of the common themes, when I finally hit rock bottom, I definitely should have gone inpatient. And when I see that question at like doctor's office, have you ever been inpatient? I always say no, not technically, but I should have gone. Because, and what happened is that as I started spiraling down into depression, everyone's just trying to do something, Irene, go to this doctor, get put on this medication. I ended up getting put on a medication, and I wasn't really in the brain space to be able to take it at the right time. And that's really was like the final linchpin that sent me into it was really just a spiral, you know, of not being able to get up in the morning, not being able to function. And this had never happened. You have to understand, this had never happened to me before. And I was 36 years old at the time. I'd been a high functioning adult in this world. So there was something going on with the hormones and the interplay of the trauma and the hormones on it. So I finally end up just doubling down on everything. I was like, I'm either going to take my own life, or I'm going to therapy. I'm going to group therapy. I'm exercising. And I signed up for a different psychiatrist, because at the time it was a general practitioner who had given me the original, I forgot what the name of the medication was, but the one that really like had me hit down. Later on in group therapy, another woman brought up that she had taken that medication and she couldn't take it anymore, because if she took it at night, in the morning she would wake up thinking about like taking her own life. And I had that experience too. The additional hormones that I was put on definitely played into it. As far as like the support of my family and the people around me, I would say that I was, you know, like Susan Page and Kamala. I was definitely Susan Page. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I didn't know how to stand up for myself. And I didn't know how to express to my partner at that time or my family that I was something was really wrong. And I was ashamed too. So, you know, I definitely learned how through group therapy to be more assertive without going overboard in it. But I would say that the people around me at that time had a really hard time holding space for my experience without trying to correct it. And it was in those overcorrections that also contributed to the anxiety and depression, you know. And I'm sure you guys probably feel the same way when people are telling you what to do. And I can only imagine as a mom that it's probably really intense. You know, breastfeed, don't breastfead, blah. So, yeah, like I said, I'm an anomaly, so I can't share the exact same experiences, but in some ways I do understand the wanting to change it. And so you start taking medications, and those medications contribute to the depression or, you know, traumatizing of your partner or people not being able to hold your hand and not change it. And in that over advice phase actually freaks people out more. At least that's been my experience. So that's all.
Well, I honestly think all these things overlap. I mean, yeah, we're talking about postpartum depression, but we're also talking about the root causes of these things. So I think they overlap because a lot of things that you've talked about are things that in my male support group that men suffer through, right? So they're always underlying things, and especially the family support is a big thing because in the Black community, and Keyondra, I want you to talk later in this because you've been having some posts. We're gonna do our own podcast later, but you've been having some posts that just been ringing on me. You know, in the Black community, it's really hard, one, for people to admit that there's an issue, and then like it's almost like we have to. I said this to you earlier. Like in the Black community, we're taught to condone this bad behavior and this depression and bullshit that is really harming us and then perpetuating generations and generations. And it's now becoming a thing where we're saying, no, get some damn help. I got family members that I don't talk to anymore because I'm like, bruh, I'm living a whole different life. I got my wife, I got my daughter, I'm on some peaceful shit. Whatever problems I have personally, I'm going to get some help for them problems. It's not her responsibility to deal with my problems. It's me to deal with that. But what we've been taught so much is we have to condone this bullshit and these problems when that's not really it. You got to do the work. You have to do the work. Keyondra, finish us off for this topic, then we'll move on.
I'm glad you said that because I was actually sitting here thinking that in the African American community, like growing up, it's not so much about condoning it. It's like we're never taught about getting help because it's like if something is wrong or if you're having a problem, it's like you're taught to just snap out of it, keep on going. You know, you don't get an opportunity to express, to talk about it. You're looked at as being weak. It's kind of very hard to open up about those things. And I always speak on, like, my mom had 5 kids, and out of those 5 kids being raised in the same household, is really amazing to me how we all are so different, right? And I have talked to my brothers and sisters about, look, y'all need help. Like one of my brothers and one of my sisters, they are now getting help and they are getting medication because now they realize that something, you know, they were going through depression. You know, one of my sisters, she has, she's bipolar, but we didn't know that growing up. My mama didn't know about it either, you know, so somebody had to step in to, you know, bring that to the forefront to discuss it. As far as the support system, with me, with my daughter, I had it and then I didn't have it. I feel like I had it, but not in the aspect that I needed it or I wanted it. Like my dad was really there when I had my daughter. He was very, very supportive from the moment I gave birth to her, even when he found out I was pregnant. But he died a year after I had my daughter. My mom she wasn't as supportive. My mama wanted me to have an abortion. I almost had an abortion. I actually went to the clinic. When you go, you have a consultation. They let you know how far along you are and things of that nature. And the next day I was supposed to go and have the abortion, but my cousin told my grandmother. And the day I was leaving out, my grandmother stopped me and prevented me from going, right? So I kind of battled with that because I wanted the baby. I didn't want it. I had my mom in my ear, you know, things of that nature. But I can say that my best friend, who is my daughter's godmom, she was very, 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 very supportive. I mean, very. She was the only person I ever opened up to during that time. And I was honest with her, and I told her that I didn't feel connected to my daughter. I actually told her like I didn't want her. Even after I had her, it still was like, this is not what I want. I don't feel a connection to her, you know. So even though I opened up to my best friend about it, over time, other friends will talk. Of course, people were talking behind my back. My best friend expressed how she felt about what I said to her. And again, like I said earlier, they were discussing saying that I was a bad mom and how could you feel like that about your own child, you know, things of that nature, you know. But again, I didn't know. I had postpartum. I didn't know anything was really wrong. I really believed what I was hearing, that I was a bad mom. I was living with my mom and my grandmother at the time when I did have my daughter. And I can say, like, before my grandmother passed, she was supportive as well. And I remember a time I was sitting trying to get my baby to go to sleep, like rocking her to sleep, and she would not go to sleep, and she was crying. And she was crying, and I was crying too. Like, I'm like, how am I going to do this? And my grandmother, she came and she got my daughter and she consoled her. But I can say, as I'm thinking about it, no, it's like you can't teach a person how to be a mother. However, I was 19 and I didn't get the guidance on someone actually teaching me. Like, my grandmother took my baby and consoled her, but nobody never told me, well, maybe if you try like this, or, you know, comfort her in this way. It was like I was insulted more than, you know, help. So like I said, I had support and I didn't really have the support, if that makes sense. And I'm kind of blurred with everything because it was 20 years ago when I had my daughter, but I do remember feeling just like lost and torn because I had so many different people in my ear, whether it was my sister, my mom, my dad, my grandmother. It was so many people. And, you know, I believe like when you have a child, they should have some sort of stability. And I didn't have stability for my daughter. The first year I'm staying with my mom and my grandmother. Then I'm staying with my other grandmother. Then I'm staying with my friends. So I wasn't in a good place either, you know. And everyone will always ask about the baby, how the baby doing. And it's so ridiculous to even say this, but I'm like, everybody asking about the baby, what about me? You know, but that's a child, you know, and I'm like, this is ridiculous for me to feel this way. You know, it was so embarrassing, like, what's wrong with me? You know, but I felt like that. Nobody asked me, how was I doing? You know,
We got you, Bumblebee. We got you.
Yeah, I feel you on that one.
I was about to say the worst type of loneliness is the loneliness in the presence of another, you know.
it's like I still feel like I never got the help. I feel like I pulled myself up out of what I was going through. And the thing is, I love my daughter so much. We have an awesome relationship. And I explained to her, you know, I was very open with her, and I told her that I didn't want her. You know, I told her how I felt when I had her. And I just told her I don't know where it came from. And I just started falling in love with her, you know, the person. It wasn't that I loved her just because she was my child, and people feel like, oh, since it's your child, you have to have this automatic connection. Like, I didn't feel it, you know, and I was honest with her, and it's just like, and Tony knows I talk about her all the time. Like, I just fell in love with the being, you know, the person. And sometimes I just think about ways that I felt like I didn't have the connection. I didn't want her. And I feel bad sometimes, you know, because of the way I feel for her now. And when I think about the fact of me almost having an abortion and not having my daughter, like, she did. And I know people say it and it sounds so cliche, but she did. She changed me. You know, she made me gentle, you know, because I can be a little rough, you know, but she made me gentle, you know, and everything that I felt that I lacked, I gave it to her. You know, I purposely gave her everything that I lacked. I did it with a purpose, you know, and I told her that even throughout raising her, I felt like I was training her. You know, I always told her how much I love her. And I keep saying I did because she moved out. You know, she graduated this year. She moved out. And I'm going through that right now, you know, just having a disconnect from her like that. But I still, again, I probably need to go and get help that I never got. I never spoke to a counselor or anything. I got myself together, and I trained myself and pulled myself out of what I was going through. But honestly, I think that I probably need, you know, somebody to talk to, because opening up to you guys, it feels good, you know. Like I said, I spoke to my friend years ago about how I felt, but I never opened up verbally again to anyone anymore about it. You know, this is my first time actually speaking, you know, I guess publicly about it to anyone, but it was a horrible thing for me to go through, and I just felt like I didn't have anyone because no one understood. And again, it's just like in our culture, they don't talk about it, you know, and you gotta always be strong and just snap out of everything. So I am glad that Tony is giving us this space to vent, to speak on it and come together. And I'm sorry, y'all, I really am.
No, don't apologize ever. I'm gonna say this. Man. And I'm gonna go back to what I said at the beginning about loving yourself gently. I know you say you're rough, Keyondra. You've always just given it to us straight up, right? I remember what was the poem you used to do? What was the poem you used to do? I know this nigga didn't say this, but what's the poem that you used to do? How did it start?
I hope you don't think I'm going on a diet.
Yeah. And she would go in. I fell in love with this woman at that point. This is 2012. I'm hosting poetry shows, and she just walked on the stage with this ferocity. So it's like, don't think of it like you're rough. You always just gave it to us straight. You know what I mean? Because I think about everything that you do, and I'm not even using this as a moment to like, I'm not trying to psychologize. What am I trying to say here? I'm not trying to, you know what I'm trying to say. Anyways, what I'm saying is, from what I've seen of you, you've never been rough. You told us how it was from the jump. You always spoke with ferocity, but you always speak with love, and your intentions are always with love, and your movements are with love. I wouldn't know TJ if it wasn't for you. You know what I mean? Like, you introduced him to Dom introduced him to me. He's now in the support group, and this man is now doing work in the LGBTQ community. He's getting more and more confident with himself. You're doing the tip of server movement. Love yourself gently. You know, you're not rough. You just real. And honestly, that's some shit that I have been teaching myself, is how to just speak more candid rather than beat around the bush and be passive aggressive. So,
Thank you.